So there is an internet phenomenon who also is a Guinness World Record holder, who I recently have become a big fan of. And that man's name is David motherfucking Goggins. And right, David Goggins, for those who don't know, up until very recently, he held the pull-up record. He did over 4,000 pull-ups in 24 hours. The record is most pull-ups in 24 hours. It recently got broken, but he was the holder of that record. He also has done a 205-mile race. I don't know the exact details of that, but I believe that's also a Guinness Book of World Records that he holds. He's an animal. And so for those who don't know his story, the quick version is he was a heavy guy. He weighed 297 pounds, I believe it was. He had a very wild, rough, fucked up life. He wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And so his story, which a lot of people knows, this is where it begins for most people. His story before that, a lot of people don't know. But this is where we'll start for the purpose of this conversation.
Sure.
And so he wanted to be a Navy SEAL, and he was already past the usual age of recruitment, and he was clearly overweight. He found a place that would take him. He had to do two things simultaneously, which was study for a specific test you have to pass to enter the Navy. And then he also had to lose over 100 pounds in 3 months. And so in 3 month span, he had to both pass this test. I forgot the name of the test, but it starts with a V. If I can find it in between now and when this comes out, I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah.
But whatever, he had to pass this test,
Yeah.
and he had to lose over 100 pounds. And so David Goggins went on this wild journey of both studying and working out every day, grinding. And in less than 3 months, he loses over 100 pounds. So to just explain a little bit, to enter, you have to be a specific height and weight. You have to be a specific weight, which is based on your height. So based on his height, he had to weigh 190 something pounds. He weighed 297, so he had to come down. So he accomplished it, and David Goggins is now revered as this monster. People look at him as a superhero. He's also a best-selling author today. He has 2 books that are out and widely sold. And I didn't know shit about him until maybe like August of last year, or maybe even September. It was like the beginning of the fall when I said on here, right after I said on here that I was going to start doing running and kind of like training for a marathon. And I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and she was like, "Oh, okay, you on your David Goggins shit. I got you." And I was like, "Who is David Goggins?" She's like, "Oh, no, never mind. Don't even look him up because I know your style. Forget I said it. Erase that name from your brain." And I was like, "Oh, now I got to look him up." And I started looking him up, and I found all of this stuff. And so I have now consumed tons and tons of David Goggins content. I recently purchased the audiobook for his first book, which is called You Can't Hurt Me. And the reason we decided to talk about David Goggins is because David Goggins has kind of made extreme fitness popular. And so even someone who you and I both follow, Dre, Rich Roll had David Goggins on his podcast, and he said on the podcast that he actually was inspired by Goggins to get into ultra marathons. And so I was like, holy shit, look at that. And so David Goggins is revered as this ultra marathon runner and like an extreme sports dude. There's so much to say, but I'm trying to give a quick version here. And so Dre had an idea, and I'll let Dre tell y'all the idea.
Well, yeah, the idea is very simple. I disagree with a lot of David Goggins' perspective, and I know what side that you're pretty much on. And I wanted to have this conversation with you where we're both on 2 different sides. And, we usually see middle ground. And there's some things that I agree with him about. But my stance is that David Goggins is toxic to the fitness industry, period.
Okay.
That's my stance. You know what I'm saying? Now, I understand adversity. I understand, what he had to do, but I just feel like, yo, this dude is toxic, and I'm going to try to prove that in terms of the fitness industry, right? Um,
Okay.
where should I begin? You know,
Well, I was going to ask first, for the listeners, can we define what you mean by the fitness industry?
Yeah. So what I mean by the fitness industry is the people that you and I talk to when we make this podcast, right? We talk to people who are trying to get into fitness. They're getting their toe wet a little bit. They're beginners. They might be intermediate, and they want to embrace a better lifestyle. They want to embrace fitness. They want to embrace health, and they understand that, hey, diet and exercise is a big portion of that. And so
Okay.
um let me try to get into this thing, and are there some tips out there that I can use? People tell you, I mean, why did we start this podcast, right? Because people always come to you asking you stuff, people always come to me asking me stuff,
Right.
and I was just like, yo, you know what, let's just put it out there and have our normal conversations that we usually have, before there was a pod, and put it out to the people, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it'll inspire and help people, either get started or to keep going on their fitness journey. And so
Right.
when I say that he's toxic, that's what I'm saying, is that the things that he's saying just puts acid into everything that I just said. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It's not helpful for those kinds of cats. You know what I mean? Um,
Okay.
it's this sense of like, no excuses, just keep going, forget about the pain, do shit that you don't like to do. I'm like, what? No, hell no, don't do, no, you know, um, stop being a bitch. What does that mean? Like, I know,
But you say that.
but I know you and I say all the time, like, hey, if something is like hurting you, calm down for a minute. Like, you don't want to break yourself by doing this because you could cause permanent damage. But he's not saying anything like
Yes.
that. He's just like, yo, the pain means to keep going. What? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that at all. That the pain mean, if you keep going, you could permanently hurt yourself. And that is part of the toxicity that I feel he's spewing. And, it needs to be addressed. And I'd like to address it on this podcast with you. And, let's see if we can enlighten one another,
Okay.
as it were.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So wait, is it on me now?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I think that Goggins' mentality
Mm-hmm.
and Goggins' message were very raw in the beginning. And I think a lot of the things that we see today that have gone viral are the things that you've said, where it paints him as this extremist, where it paints him as this person who's like, I don't give a fuck if my foot is broken, I'm gonna duct tape my shoe and keep going,
Right.
right? But like anyone else in life, there's evolution, right?
Mm.
And so today, Goggins' message, where he knows and understands, it's kind of been skewed, and people have taken sound bites like anything else, right? So he has further explained what he means. And so he recently dropped the second book, like I said. And in the second book, he's doing his round of interviews and podcasts to kind of talk about the book, but people ask him other questions. And so this is one of the things that he's addressed. And so Goggins says, and I guess we'll start backwards, but as far as pushing past the pain, what his thing is that a lot of people push to what they say is 100%, right? It's like, I gave this workout my all and I stopped. He feels that's not true. He feels a lot of times what happens is we psych ourselves out mentally and we say, I stopped when I could, but really you could have kept going, right? And so his thing is, he realized within himself, he really was stopping at maybe 40%, not 100%. And his journey has been and still is to find what is the 100%. And so that's what his message is. His message is, what is really your limit, right? Kind of like the movie Point Break, which we've discussed before, the newer version. There's a quote that I love, which they say, when a man looks for his breaking point, he only sees limits. It's not until you push yourself to the point of breaking that you find out where your limits really are. And so that's kind of where Goggins is at with it, right? Where it's like, I ran a mile and I stopped. I think that was good for today. Or I ran a mile and it started getting challenging, so I stopped. But really, you probably could have got out 5 miles if you really pushed yourself to that 100%. He feels like people kind of stop when it gets difficult as opposed to when they've hit empty. And there's a difference, right? And so his thing is push yourself. And he's explained that, like I said, in the most recent round of stuff, the last maybe 6 months. And so he's saying if you can only run a mile, that's okay. You don't have to run 205 miles. In fact, you shouldn't run 205 miles. But what you should do is say, okay, today I could only do a mile. Okay, go home, rest up. Tomorrow, push past the 1 mile. And keep doing that. Every day, challenge yourself. Every day, challenge yourself with those limits. Push and push and push and push, which we've said here as well. I remember when we spoke about Natalie Portman training for Thor, you were saying that's what you would tell her. You would tell her, okay, that's what you did. You did, I don't remember the number, but let's just say 10 pounds. You say, okay, tomorrow let's try 15 pounds, right? And so that's kind of the same thing David Goggins is saying as far as limitations. He's saying that we put these mental caps on what we can do, where it's like, well, I can only run 5 miles. I can only run 10 miles. Well, you don't really know if you're not pushing yourself. Because if you say to yourself, I can only run a mile, you're only going to run a mile.
I
If you say, hey, I can only lift 20-pound dumbbells, you'll never go above 20-pound dumbbells.
I agree with that. I agree with that portion. The problem is, how do you assess? And if you remember when we had that conversation, I always say assess and then see where you are, right? So it's like you do 20, you assess. How do you feel? Is it super sore? Is it not that sore? It's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well now, yeah, add a little bit more. But the assessment is important. I would never tell someone to just, keep going harder and harder. There's another bodybuilder that I follow, Greg Doucette, his whole thing is harder than the last time. He does that's his like signature line. Harder than the last time, harder than the last time. It's like, well, what does that mean? Like every time you go into the gym, you have to go harder, like you have to do more weight, you have to do more time, but every time you go, make sure it's harder. And I'm like, I don't really agree with that, because you have to know, you have to feel out when you're coming to your limit. Also, we realize we're just regular cats, right? It's like we have to balance this whole workout stuff with our lives. People might have to go to work after that. People might have to, take care of kids and everything else. So it's a balance. And when you have an extreme mindset, you tend to go all the way out on one thing, and then the other stuff will suffer. You see what I'm saying? And it's just like you said, when he said, okay, I'm going to lose this weight, right? Because I want to be in the military, well, this special unit, and I got to study for this thing. Nothing else matters. Everything else by the wayside. Fuck my relationships, my friends, fuck all that. Because the only thing that matters is this. For me, I'm like, I'm not saying not to, but I'm also like, that's an unbalanced dude. That's an unbalanced cat. I'm a martial artist first, and I believe in harmony. You know what I'm saying? I believe in balance. And this is why my clients, when I'm training them, I consider all that. When I sit down with a client, and I just got a new one, tell me about your life. Not just your fitness life, but I want to know about everything. Okay, how many kids you got? What kind of work do you do? What kind of blah, blah, blah. Now, It's my job as your fitness coach or trainer to say, okay, I'm going to come up with something that takes all that into consideration and help you get results, because those things are important too. And so I would never have you wild out. You know what I'm saying? I would never have somebody just, yo, just keep going. Nothing else matters. Like, nah, no, that is not the way as the Mandalorian. You know what I mean? That is not the way. That is not how to do it. You have to have balance. I mean, I got actually videos pulled up that I really wanted to have you respond to. If we got time, we could do that. Where he's like, one of them that I have.
Yeah, I got time.
He's like, rest day. Fuck out of here. Okay, so you don't believe in
I know this video.
You don't believe in recovery? Nah, there ain't no such thing as there's no rest days. You just keep going and going and going.
Yes.
That's a great way to get zero fucking results. Because, I mean, even if you're a runner, your body has to recover. You know what I'm saying? You're not a super person. Only thing you're doing is breaking yourself down. All exercises break your body down. Every exercise you do breaks your body down. It's the rest part that rebuilds. And if you're saying, nah, you'll never need a rest, you're creating a lot of damage, you know? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share some of these videos, and then I'll let you respond. And, you know, and people in the comments can say, you know, what they feel about it. And it's no particular order, but I'm just gonna like go.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw the specs on, even though I think I know exactly what video you're talking about already.